How the king loves this unattractive Spanish woman. For 36 years of marriage, he has not had a single favorite and has no children out of wedlock. And indeed, King Edward I loved his wife so much that almost never parted with her. In all military campaigns, faithful Eleanor was by his side, often giving birth to children in the same marching conditions. Eleanor was born in 1241 in Castile. She was the daughter of King Ferdinand III of Castile and Leon and his second wife Jean, Countess of Ponthier. Eleanor had 2 siblings and 7 half-siblings. The princess received a good education and was very fond of reading. The girl lost her father at the age of 11. And 2 years later she had to get married. Because her older brother Alfonso, who became the new king of Castile, organized for her a dynastic alliance with Edward, son of King Henry III of England. The 2 kings agreed that the Spanish infanta would bring with her in dowry to the English prince rich duchy of Gascony, which was on the territory of France. And in 1254 the wedding of these 2 almost still children took place in Spain. The groom was 15 years old and the bride was 13. They were each other's third cousins. Edward I was nicknamed Longshanks because of his tall stature. He had beautiful blonde hair. True, the prince had a slightly drooping eyelid over one eye, but he was considered an attractive young man at court. Young Eleanor fell in love with her husband at first sight. No descriptions of the princess's appearance can be extracted from the manuscripts left behind, which may indicate her ordinary appearance. For example, although the mother-in-law was considered the main beauty of her time, the chroniclers left many descriptions of her appearance. Despite this, the prince was in love with his plain wife. Edward always took before him as an example of his parents, King Henry III and Eleanor of Provence, whose relationship was happy. Therefore, in his family life, the prince strived for a similar successful relationship. For several years after the wedding, the couple lived in Gascony and then moved to England. Eleanor always supported her husband and helped him in everything. A year after the wedding, the couple had their first child, who soon passed away. A total of 16 children were born in this marriage. But only 6 of them lived to adulthood. 1 son and 5 daughters. During the Second Baronial War between Edward's father and his vassals, the prince spent some time in prison in 1264. Then he was captured by the rebellious barons with whom he fought. And his young wife Eleanor was placed under house arrest by the barons in the Palace of Westminster. Edward soon managed to escape from captivity. And King Henry III put down the barons' rebellion and freed his daughter-in-law. Eleanor is associated with a fascinating legend, according to which she saved her husband from death in 1272 during the Eighth Crusade. During the siege of Acre in Palestine, Edward's chambers were infiltrated by an assassin who stabbed the king with a poisoned dagger. According to legend, Eleanor instantly came to her husband's aid, sucking the poisoned blood from his wound. This exciting story became so popular that artists created many paintings depicting this episode. In reality, however, when the wound began to fester, the healer performed a minor operation, and the prince's hand was saved. The prince's father, Henry III, died in 1272, and Edward I ascended the throne of England. Eleanor was 31 when she became queen. At that time, the couple still had no heir to the throne, but had several healthy daughters. After the birth of 2 boys who died in infancy, they had their long-awaited son Alfonso in 1273, who was long considered the heir to the throne. Unfortunately, the boy died at the age of 10. In 1284 the couple had another son, the future King Edward II. And the boy was born when Eleanor and her husband were on a military campaign in Wales. Everyone rejoiced. At court, many discussed that the bond between the royal couple was so strong that they even gave some attention to their children. However, it was common at the time for kings to entrust the care of their children to nursemaids and tutors. The king's children grew up away from their parents, in country palaces where they had their own courtiers and servants. Instead, Eleanor endeavored to provide all her children with an excellent education by hiring the best teachers. The queen herself, on the other hand, was not so well liked at court. The English regarded her as a foreigner first and foremost, especially as she did not speak English very well. With her husband Eleanor mainly communicated in French, as their mothers were both French. In addition, the English court was still bilingual at that time. Also, the scruffy nobility was not satisfied with the fact that the queen actively helped her relatives, who came with her from Spain. Eleanor had a calm, energetic and determined character. She had excellent business acumen. The queen acquired new lands and estates, and then rented them out, receiving income, which amazed the local aristocracy. She did not participate much in the political life of the country. But she always patronized art and literature, encouraged the making of tapestries, and was fond of the design of royal gardens. She liked to be surrounded by beautiful things. In those days, happy marriages among the nobility were rare, as unions were mostly for dynastic reasons. Henry and Eleanor's marriage, however, stood out for genuine love. They were always together. Eleanor, often pregnant, boldly accompanied her husband everywhere. They traveled together to Palestine, Wales, Sicily, and Scotland. Edward spent most of his life in endless wars, as well as in brutal campaigns against Scotland, for which he earned the nickname Hammer of the Scots. He was famous for his harsh and violent temper, so most of his subjects feared him. But not Eleanor. Next to her he was transformed. The relationship between the couple was so tender that the chronicles preserved amusing records about them. When Lent ended, the Queen's maids of honor demanded a ransom from Edward for the right to enter Eleanor's bedroom after Lent. And the king willingly paid this humorous ransom every year. It became so much of a habit with him that even when the Queen died, on the first day of the end of Lent after her death, Edward handed out money to the Queen's court ladies. It was as if his wife was still alive. In the final years of her life, Eleanor began to encounter illnesses, probably caused by her many pregnancies and childbirths, which weakened her health. The Queen died in 1290 in Lincoln at the age of 49, presumably of fever. Her death was a profound shock to Edward, and he was present at her passing. The king was so stricken by the loss of his wife that he did not leave his chambers for several days. He later ordered 12 stone crosses to be erected in Eleanor's honor in the towns through which her morning journey to London passed. 2 of these crosses have survived to this day. As the years passed, his advisors insisted that Edward remarry, for despite his many children, he had only one son. And the crown needed heirs. So 9 years after his wife's death, Edward remarried. His second wife was the French Princess Margaret in 1299. They had 2 sons and a daughter. And the daughter Edward in honor of the first wife touchingly named Eleanor. He did not forget about his deceased wife and every year attended memorial services for her. The king died in 1307 at the age of 68. And the new king of England was his son from Eleanor, Edward II.